Hello, you found the rabbi and the pastor. I was going to say I am the rabbi. I'm not the rabbi. I'm the pastor. My
Well,
name
then
is
I'd have to be the
Philpott.
pastor.
The pastor of Miller Avenue Baptist Church in Mill Valley, California. And this is Rabbi.
And I'm Rabbi Tsvi Bar David, and I'm the founder of Kirva, Closest to God, multi-faith music community.
And that's centered in Berkeley.
It is.
It's centered in Berkeley. Okay, Tsvi. Well, we're doing our best with producing our programs here that get broadcast on just the Marin channel, and then they go up on YouTube, and we get them up pretty quick. But the topic for this program is social justice. Last program was dealing with racism and those sorts of prejudice. Now we're talking about social justice. How would, Tsvi, forgive me for just laying this on you, but how would you define social justice?
I always go back to the Hebrew, Kent, you know that. And what's beautiful about the Hebrew is that social justice is a mitzvah. It's a commandment, and it's a mitzvah not only in individuals but on the group and however the group governs itself. And thus, in my view, it's an obligation, and not just my view, and I'll give some proof here. It's an obligation upon the state, upon the government as well. Although that doesn't exempt the individual from giving charity. I want to talk about the word charity. The word charity comes from, I believe, the Latin, and it means I hold you dear, because the word carus, C-A-R-U-S, or caro in Italian and Spanish and Latin-derived languages means you are precious to me, caro, you are precious. So I give you money, or I'm nice to you, not because I'm required to do it by my religion or by the state. I do it because I feel like it, because I like you, or I feel pity for you. The word for charity in both Hebrew and Arabic is tzedakah. Let me pronounce it properly in Hebrew, tzedakah, and in Arabic, sadaqah, the same word. And it comes from the root tzedek in Hebrew that means justice. Tzedakah is actually another word for justice. In other words, it's a requirement of a just individual, or for that matter, of a just society, to take care of the poor, the orphan, the widow, and all the rest. It's not optional. It's not something I do out of the charity, out of the goodness of my heart. I also want to mention, and just get it out there, that there's some very interesting proofs of this external, archaeological proofs external to our sacred text. There was a dig about 25 kilometers outside of Jerusalem on the slopes of the Hare Yehuda, the Judean hills. I think it was on the western slopes in the direction of Tel Aviv. And it turned out that these ruins were roughly from the time of the beginning of the kingdom of Israel, namely the kings Saul, David, and Solomon, roughly the time of David. And the city of Jerusalem was surrounded by, I don't know how many fortresses, 3, 4, 5 fortresses. So there were these garrisons, fortress cities surrounding Jerusalem in a circle on the slopes of the mountain, overlooking the coastal plain on the west and the Jordanian desert on the east, to protect the city of Jerusalem. And around 2007, Israeli archaeologists found a potsherd, an ostrakon, right? They found a potsherd, and there was writing on this potsherd in the old Hebrew script that we used to use before we adopted the script we have today, which is a script in which Aramaic was written in Babylonia. So we only got that script when we went into exile in 586 BCE. So, and there are several interpretations of that ostrakon. The ostrakon is chipped and broken. It's hard to read in places, but the interpretation I like the most, and after the show I can send you a link, to where you can read about this. It's fascinating. Somebody took a piece of clay, wrote on it, fired it, so it would last, well, forever, right? And the ostracon says, it is the obligation of the king, i.e. the government. It is the obligation of the king to take care of the widow and the orphan. And then it uses two different words for the poor, ani ve'evyon, Ebionites, right? Ani ve'evyon. And furthermore, l'shakem ani ve'evyon. That's a very specific verb, Kent, in Hebrew. L'shakem means to rehabilitate a poor person so that they're no longer poor. Help them get an education, help them learn a trade, so on and so on and so forth. But notice something. Here's a Jewish person who's literate, possibly a soldier, possibly a priest, possibly someone else associated with the fortress, who is making the statement. Now, I don't know if the kingdom of Israel was run that way, maybe not. But there were certainly Jews 3,000 years ago who believed in social justice in the same way I do. And the truth is, my social justice beliefs go back to that anonymous person, and even further back into the Torah, to the anonymous person who scribbled on that potsherd.
Now, let me give you this counter. It's not a counter, but additional. Matthew chapter 25 is some of the last teaching of Jesus. And here's this passage starting in verse 34. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, the favored side, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared from you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. So that would be kind of a Christianing position of social justice. I mean, at the very end, this is what Jesus said to do for his followers. He wanted them to know, this will mark you as a Christian. And I would have to say that Christians have not done well living up to what Jesus has said to do. But whether we carried it out in the way we ought to still does not change Jesus's words. And it is a direct call, in my view, to social justice. And
absolutely,
I would say we have not lived up to.
What's interesting to me, Kent, when you quoted Matthew chapter 25, is that all of the acts of tzedakah, of justice and charity, because it's the same word in Hebrew,
right?
All of those acts of feeding and succoring Jesus, and then Jesus turns around and says, when you help the least of the people you're helping me. All those things are things that the Torah talks about, and the rabbis emphasize even more. And after all, Jesus arguably was a Pharisaic Jew. Interestingly enough, there are arguments.
Yeah, we don't see anything. I don't see anything in the things that Jesus taught that are at all contrary to what we see in the Hebrew Bible. But for Christians, we see in the Hebrew Bible, for example, we're going through Isaiah now in our Sunday morning services, streamed. All the prophecies of Isaiah looking forward, so we do see that. But in terms of, let's say, the issue social justice, the scripture, Hebrew and Greek Bible, are essentially one when it comes to the concept of social justice. This is what marks, here what Jesus said, this, he doesn't say you have to do this in order to earn forgiveness, but if you're going to be my followers, this is what you're called to.
Absolutely.
This is
But
what you're called to do.
there's a subtle point, and I return to it, and I think it's a critical point for me in understanding the broad swath of Christianity and across the country and Judaism, namely Christians and Jews and Muslims as well. I know enough of their scripture to say that are called to take care of the poor and the widow and the orphan, to use the biblical language, and so on and so forth. But the subtle issue, the interesting issue is this: is the call to the individual to act in that manner, or is the call also for non-governmental groups to do this sort of act? And furthermore, and this is where there are those, certainly in America, who would disagree with me, is there any obligation on the government, beyond private voluntary groups, beyond the charitable acts of individuals, is there any religious obligation on government to take care of, to do social justice, to take care of the poor? I would argue, as a Jew, going back to the anonymous individual who wrote the Ostrakon, and before him,
I was going to bring up the Ostrakon, perfectly.
Back to the Torah, it's the obligation of governments, Jewish and non-Jewish,
well, yes,
to do social justice, in addition to you and me personally.
Yeah, well, I agree, because the government is going to be made up of all kinds of different people. And right. One of the passages of Paul, Romans chapter 13, he says to the his people that are going to be reading his works, which will be a combination of Jew and Gentile in Rome, he said, obey the emperor. Mm-hmm. We Christians are called to obey the emperor, and of course, mm-hmm. the faithful people, the people of the scripture, Jew, Gentile, whatever, we are called to apply the individual commands, like we read from Matthew 25, to the broad culture, mm-hmm. and so we're to support that. And as far as my experience with the Christian community, we always have,
right.
And they're, Christians, like Jews, are really a mixed bag. Christians are really a mixed bag. I mean, four major branches: Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, Pentecostals, and other sorts and sunders. Well, we have some weird characters in Christianity, Tsvi, as you know. But nevertheless, the call goes out, and we have to, the Christians community, we don't have the capacity singly. I get calls on a regular basis for help from different kinds of people in need. And I have to turn so many of them away because financially, etc., we don't have the capacity to do that. And so it takes the broad culture of which we are a part, that we have organized into our nation and our states and our counties and cities. Of necessity, we have to work together. And right. I am for all of those programs. We have the sinfulness in humanity has subjugated numbers of people. We are racist, prejudiced, biased people, by, not that we want to be, but it's just there. And sometimes that people want that. But we have to do better than that. We have to challenge that error, and we have to point to a better way. And it's going to take the broader government. That's why we call it social justice. Is far beyond. We do what right. we can in our little communities, our little churches and the synagogues, and as you know, the mm-hmm. mosque and so on. Mm-hmm. But it's beyond us now. It's way beyond the capacity, the extent of the needs in terms of medical, in terms of housing.
Yeah.
It's huge. The cost is way beyond us. And so there's a clash. There's a clash in our culture. And I think that's one of the things that we're experiencing today with the whole things with George Floyd and all those tragedies that have come up.
Mhm.
So, and I'm just going to go one little step further, Tsvi, and then I'm going to shut up. One little point I want to bring up, I should have brought it up last week, but ran out of time. There's a lot of fear in our culture.
Yes.
There's a lot of fear. A lot of people are afraid for their lives. We see it in the COVID-19. People are afraid of getting it, afraid of giving it, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just a lot of fear, a lot of violence in our culture, a lot of all kinds of addictions, mental illnesses. Our world is not necessarily really a safe place. It can be a very dangerous place. And I think we all have that sense of us, and we're on the alert. We're on the alert. And that's part of what I see as going on. How is it in terms of social justice? How do we calm that fear? How do we build confidence? How do we have a social safety net? And I don't know if that's at all possible, but it seems to me that it's a job that if we started right now 100%, it's many generations away from being able to develop that kind of culture.
That could very well be, but I'll tell you, there are different societies in different places and times that have put into place, have decided that it was simply a priority for religious or other reasons, prudential reasons, to put into place a social safety network. I mean, as you know, by and large in Europe, medical care is a right, not a privilege. Throughout Europe, I mean, I think one of the things that's going to save the National Health Service in Britain is the fact that, well, not to put too fine a point of it, the National Health Service saved the life of the Conservative Prime Minister of Great Britain, Boris Johnson. So suddenly he's not going to be he's saying very nice things about the National Health Service. It's an interesting fact of medieval Muslim history that in most Muslim kingdoms during the Middle Ages, like in Spain, like in North Africa, there was a free network of hospitals supported out of the public purse by taxation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Free hospitals.
Capitalism has worked wonders in a lot of ways, but it has its real downsides.
No kidding.
If you can't be on the upside of that situation, you're going to suffer. And over a period of time, it increases. It just deteriorates further. When I in Portland, Oregon, black and white neighborhood, a black family lived right behind us. The kid was one of my best friends. We did all kinds of sports together. I didn't know that there was trouble between black and whites. In Portland, Oregon, I just didn't see it. It wasn't there. We were
Lucky
just
for you.
All one community there.
Yeah.
But then that has changed now. I don't see that sort of thing now happening in our culture. I don't know what impacted it, but we're at the bottom of the hill right now. We've been shoved to the bottom of the hill when it comes to caring for all the people in our community who need that help. And it is a governmental situation, as we both understand, that is far larger than any faith community. We do it on a little bit of stuff that comes our way. Yeah, we do that.
Mhm.
There are a lot of Christian organizations, Jewish organizations
Mhm.
that reach out to people in need. They're,
Mhm.
they're, they're international, they're local. We
Mhm.
have lots of that. But still, that's not going to bring about the kind of ideal of social justice that we would like to see.
You know, humanity is facing many challenges. I mean, the worldwide pandemic is certainly one of them, but another challenge is um, the computer revolution in industry, the introduction of robots in, for example, car manufacturing plants and other places that are throwing lots of workers out of work. And not only that, there's increasingly going to be a use of artificial intelligence that will sooner or later pose a threat to so-called knowledge workers like lawyers and programmers and other knowledge workers. And so what is the meaning of work? What people need to work, not just because it earns them money. I mean, I have a very dear friend who's a PhD physicist from UC Berkeley, real super sharp guy. And he's my age, a little older. And up until COVID-19, he was still doing consulting work in the areas of applied physics and materials. And he doesn't really need the money. He doesn't really need the money, but he's just depressed when he can't find work that's meaningful to him, because one of the places in which people find tremendous meaning in life is meaningful work. And people are being thrown out of work. So there's, first of all, the economic issue of unemployment, and then there's the issue of, sort of the psychospiritual issue of meaning. How do I find meaning in life? And for
Mhm.
so many of us, I'm certainly me, when I was in the software industry for decades, work was one of the major sources of meaning and consolation, not to speak of money, in my life. And yet the technological trends are going to be throwing more and more people out of conventional jobs.
Yeah.
And that's a social issue. How are we going to deal with that as a society? I mean, our views of money, leisure, unemployment, work, they're going to have to change because the technology, and I've been in the software field for a long time, the technology is not going to go away.
No, there's going to be a long period of time for the way our economy is structured right now to begin to make this acceptable. It's going to be a long time coming, and the kind of anger that we're seeing displayed today, I thoroughly understand it. I have compassion for it, but I see it as potentially destructive at the same time, because we don't have in place as a people, in our governmental systems, in our spirituality, even educationally, we don't have it in place to raise everybody. And I think what will happen, there will be an increased socialization. I think there's going to be, of necessity, a moving away from the standard capitalistic model, because it's increasingly not working for a large segment of our culture.
Yeah.
And again, I'm repeating myself, but I just cannot see, Tsvi, right now that we have the wherewithal. I think, as I've seen the response to everything that's gone on with the George Floyd thing and all the stuff that goes way in the past, the inequities, the subjugation of a people of color,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's a tragedy. It's completely wrong, and I think there's got to be a call for patience, a call for prayer, a call for fellowship, a call for loving one another,
Mm-hmm.
doing unto others as they would have them do unto us, the golden rule that Jesus said. And but the pushing and demanding may not be, you just can't change a person's heart and mind by threatening them. It just doesn't work.
Polarizes them.
There has to be acceptance, there has to be forgiveness, opportunities for confession and admitting the sin that's in me that impacts you, impacts our culture. I'm looking for, Tsvi, I'm looking for a revolution. A love revolution. We talked about that in the Jesus People movement. We called it the love revolution. There needs to be a love revolution here so that we can begin to raise the whole of it, the whole of the culture, a little bit at a time. But those are just some of my crazy ideas, Tsvi.
I love it, Ken. Yeah, I love it. Let's keep at it.
Yeah. So we may have a long way to go.
We do.
This is kind of the last word I'd say. I would like to put out a call for patience. For patience. Let's be patient with each other. As the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
You remember, there's not many people around, Tsvi, that remember that old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. And what we want to see, the social justice that we really want to see, people of all faiths want to see this. I think we're going to have to be patient, but nevertheless moving in that direction, not sitting around, folding our hands and say, we'll leave it to another generation. No, we have to be moving and going in that direction now, but not be so demanding and building bigger walls. See, the potentiality is the more the demands, the push to change, we'll just simply build the walls a little bit higher. I think we need to be sensitive to that and be patient and loving one another. All right, Tsvi, I think we've come to the end of another program. I think we've got 3 more hours, 3 more things that we do, and I think they're coming up. And this is June. We'll try to get one in July, August, and September.
Okay.
Hey, Tsvi, it's been good, buddy.
It's been wonderful, Ken.
Okay, here's how we'll do it, Tsvi. I'll say, may the peace of God be with you, and then you say it too, and then we close, okay?
Okay. Go ahead.
May the peace of God be with you.
May the peace of God be with you.
All right, Tsvi, my friend. So long,
All right.
guy.
See ya.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above you.